Welcome to Connect It with Kim. I'm Kim McDonnell, connecting you to the stories of the change agents of our world. You change, they change.
Got it. Okay. So welcome everyone. This is Theresa Destrebecq, the founder of Thrive Within and the Book Circle. And I'm super excited to have here Kim McDonnell, the author of You Change, They Change. And she's going to talk to us for the next 45 minutes or so about her book, her work, and just leave you with all sorts of things to reflect on, potentially take action on. So Kim can introduce herself so much better than I can. So I'm going to let her do that, and then we'll get into the dialogue.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Theresa. And I love how life brings you people and you don't know what the purpose is. And then here we are making it purposeful. So I appreciate you seeing in me something that you wanted to share with others. So my name is Kim McDonnell, as you said, and I wrote this book, You Change, They Change, How to Take Control of Your Life by Losing Control Over Others. And I know based on probably your questions, we're going to go into why I wrote that book and what it meant in my journey to get to be a first-time author. And probably not a last time. I do have more in this tank to go. But for right now, what I do is I'm a spiritual counselor and health coach. And I help people transform their lives by looking inward and seeing where they're imbalanced and bringing their body into balance, including their mind and their spirit and their soul and, the physical being, so that they can put more love out into this world and receive love back.
So beautiful. What a great introduction. And just to give someone people context, because you brought it up, but you didn't go into details. So about 3 weeks ago, Kim and I were in Los Angeles together at a conference, and there was 1,000 people there. And, I went to lunch with someone that I knew, and we paired up with another couple, two other people that we just had met and done an exercise with. And then that woman knew Kim and her husband and daughter. So then we ended up all eating lunch together. And Kim and I were next to each other and we're chatting, and right towards the end of the lunch, she hands me her book. She's like, "This is a gift." And I was like, "Oh," and I love books. Love books. This is like nowhere near my collection. This is the to be read section, by the way. But she handed me the book and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like love," because I have another book I can read. And now here we are talking about your book.
Yeah, and I had no idea you did this book circle. Just something in me said, you're supposed to give her your book. And I had 3 in my bag, and I said, whoever's supposed to get these 3 will get these 3. And look, here we are.
Here we are.
So,
yes.
Intentional living, tuning in, and acting.
Yes, exactly. So right now we're not reading Kim's book per se in the book circle, but that doesn't mean that we won't in the future. And it doesn't mean, if you love her book, you love what she has to say, please go buy it, because there's more in the book than probably what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it is on Amazon, and it's on Kindle, and it is an audiobook. And I did the recording myself because I tend to only buy books on Audible when the person writing them reads them. That's just a snooty thing of mine. I feel like the passion comes out in their voice and resonates on a different frequency when it's their work. So I read my book. So it's out there on Audible too.
Awesome. Cool. So can we get down to the nitty gritty?
Sure. I'm ready.
Okay. So the title, You Change, They Change. So I've had this conversation with people before, like, well, if things are not going well with them, then, you can shift, obviously. And they're like, that's not going to work. So I think like the you change, they change is kind of a big statement.
Yeah.
So
some emotion, doesn't it?
Yeah. So can you tell us more about why you chose that title and kind of what your real belief is around this? Like, in order for them to change, I have to change. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, and the complete title is You Change, They Change, How to Take Control of Your Life by Losing Control Over Others.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a clue that it's not about them, it's about you. Not saying they're not, it's not about blame and shame and you're right and they're wrong, or vice versa. It's about something isn't working, and whether you want it to or not, something has to give. And I don't think anyone would read that title of that book and choose it unwittingly if they weren't ready to make a change. So it was very purposeful to select the reader, and the reader selected, because it is going to stir something in you, to have to, give up that ego, give up that need to be right, that need to be better than, that need to control your environment, as a past people pleaser, peacemaker. I very much came from, why aren't they treating me right if I'm doing all the right things? Well, that energy alone was being, more, I'm judging and I'm bigger than them, and they felt that. So even if my words weren't matching that feeling, they felt that people are more intuitive than we give them credit for. So when you shift your energy, the whole dynamic can shift. And so I've seen the proof of this, not just in my own life, but with many clients that I've, coached. So I felt like that title would stir something in the people that were supposed to be stirred, or in the people that were ready to receive this message.
I love that. I often think that sometimes when people, you say something or do something and it triggers somebody, maybe right now, like they might not be like, they're like, ooh, what? I don't know. They might not read the book, but you've planted a little seed.
Yeah.
And then they'll come back around when they're ready. If you really triggered somebody, they won't probably, like, to such a degree, they probably weren't ready yet to read that book. Exactly. But you planted the seed. And then when they are ready, they'll remember, ooh, that title was really powerful. What was that book again?
Yeah.
And then they'll come back to it.
It's exactly right. So me letting go of my need for it to, I didn't promote it heavily. I didn't, I resonate with it and I speak it, but, I feel like it's going to land where it's supposed to land, kind of like it landed in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Without, that wasn't me manipulating anything. It was just, oh, I'm supposed to give her this book. And I did. I didn't know why. And if I had put a story to why, it would have stopped me from receiving what this is.
Ah, interesting. Okay. I know that. So just that title, this, I could pinpoint a moment in my time, in my life, where I would have needed this book, where I was trying to change somebody else. I was trying to control somebody else, and I was losing control of myself because I was trying to control them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you also had some sort of pivotal moment in your own life where this book would have really helped you. Because I think that oftentimes we often serve others from a past, like, aha moment of our own.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. Yeah, it was definitely results of what I had been through in my life and what I had kept seeing. You start seeing patterns and you start seeing where, okay, what's working isn't working. Why am I still doing the same thing? So for me, my journey to this knowledge came from a place of true dis-ease, diagnoses with no cure, physically. But what I found out after starting that journey to healing my inner physical body was this enlightenment that came with that. And I believe that we all can tap into that. We get clouded by the epigenetics, the toxins we put in and on our body, the toxic thoughts that we're limiting ourselves to, our perception being low. I talk about frequencies, not in the book, but in the Dig Deeper coaching course, it's, how low is your frequency? A clue is, are you in judgment? Are you jealous? Are you comparing? Are you denying someone else, the good that's coming to them because it's not coming to you? That victim mentality. those are clues that you're not resonating at the frequency that we were all meant to resonate at, a frequency of love. And by changing the physical inside, I started raising that frequency. And so I can no longer keep that victim language. I can no longer stay in environments that were not okay. I knew better. And when you know better, you do better. So it just kept elevating, elevating, elevating. So I would say the physical for me started the journey, and then things met me on the way that seemed like unbearable struggles at the time that actually were exactly what I needed to propel me to a higher awakening. So I hope that answers you sufficiently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I do have one point of clarification that I would love to. I know what epigenetics is, but I don't know if the other people who are watching this or now or later know what epigenetics is. So could you do a quick explanation?
Yes. So because I came from this awakening from a physical, I studied the physical. My background is, my dad was a physician, an OBGYN. I spent a lot of time in medicine. I'm a science geek. So when things were going wrong with my body and what, they were telling me to do wasn't making sense for me, I asked questions that led me to my truth. Fast forward all these years later, I have studied genetics in a naturopathic world, just to prove that it's not how we're made genetically. Yes, you have some things that you can turn on genetically with your epigenetics, and your epigenetics is what you expose yourself to. So the water you're drinking, is it full of fluoride and chemicals? Is the makeup you're putting on your face full of chemicals and perfumes and fragrances and colors and dyes? Is the food that you're eating from an organic source? What did it eat? Learning about what we put in and on our body, and then what are your thoughts? Your thoughts can be toxic. Do you have a victim language? I did, because that's all I knew. That's what I was taught. I loved my mom, but she was in fear. She had a past that would make any child afraid. She lost her brother at age 6. She lost her mother at age 12, right at the time when you're in puberty, which turns on a lot of these genetics. So she lived, in a fear state, and she perpetuated that onto me and my sisters. Not intentionally. She did the best she could with what she had, but that's why most of my book is asking you questions to come to that truth. Get rid of the victim story that was somebody else's because of the life they led. It didn't have to be my life, but it was showing up as my life to prove that victim story right, because I was calling that energy in to support the story. So by changing my epigenetic thoughts, changing my food, my water, my cleansers, my face, everything I do to my body, I started resonating at that higher frequency. So your epigenetics is what you choose. Your genetics is what you don't choose, but they are actually the internal struggle you need to survive and thrive. So they're not bad. The epigenetics can be bad, or they can be really good. And together you are exactly the love you were supposed to be.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation for everybody.
You're welcome.
I mean, it helps us to see that there's a lot more that we have control over. It's not just genetic. I wasn't just born like this. No. That we have a lot more control over it.
Yes.
So how did that relate to you and your dis-ease and the whole well, you already mentioned this before, but so you said when you shifted your thoughts, then you shifted your epigenetics, you shifted and you also shifted your food and your water and your, bodily cleansers, makeup and all that. So that shifted your epigenetics.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, and then, so what happened with your dis-ease?
So you asked, for a pivotal moment. I think it was choices I made along the way. It wasn't like, oh, go from this world to this world overnight. I was led to seek out holistic health practices and just small changes, using an essential oil for, a gut ache, just my nausea and my sweating and I've got to go get my gallbladder out went away in seconds. I I was like, okay, there's something to that. You know, so there were tiny little miracles to turn on that thinking and to shine light on, well, if this is true and I never knew about this, I was never exposed to it, what else could be true? What else in my thinking could be just what I was taught based on their limited knowledge, and how I could open up my thinking even more. It didn't happen overnight, but with each step, you know, I started opening up my mind and changing things for the good. And then that bled into my children's lives and now my grandchildren's lives. So when I changed and I took a step out in faith that what I was feeling and thinking and seeing evidence of was true, it changed everything. So
okay. Can you give any specific, like, so dis-ease, body, that kind of stuff, but then your interpersonal relationships changed.
yeah.
How did those change when you changed your thoughts and your food intake and all that stuff?
Yeah. So when you change the physical, whether you were met, you know, to change based on the physical, some people come to that change because they're going through a horrific time in their life. Maybe, you know, they've had, you know, a divorce, or they're, you know, they've lost a parent, or some struggle has come into their lives and they're suffering. So people usually come to change something when they're suffering. It's just the human condition. You know, it's kind of like, as a mom, we want to save our kids from our struggle, but they're not going to learn until they struggle and make that mistake and fall and realize it's theirs to learn. And we need to let go and let them learn that. So the same was true for me. I could not change anyone else. Just because I was going through this journey and I was changing didn't mean all of a sudden my family was going to jump on board and stop using toxins and start eating, you know, better. In fact, they might do just the opposite despite me. I had to be strong enough to do this for me and live my conviction because it was mine. Yes, I could see the evidence of why everyone should, and it was really hard not to want to change them and say, hey, this is so much better for you. So the higher I got in that evidence of that, I think you go through a period where you're angry because you're literally dying to self. You're detoxing the old pattern of you, the victim. And so for me, that looked like fighting against that need to please, fighting against that need to keep the peace and avoid conflict, when in actuality, I needed to rise up and say, I'm mad, I'm angry, but not in a way that was shaming and blaming, in a way that they could receive it. And so the biggest shift personally has been with my marriage. You know, my husband and I fit together at 16. I'm 47 now. We have grandkids together. But as I went through this change, it was obvious that what used to be okay was no longer acceptable. He had narcissistic tendencies. I was a people pleaser. That fit nicely together, and then it didn't.
Yeah.
So I could have done the easy thing that I think a lot of people do when they go on this journey to self-help and self-love. They escape the toxic situation. But something in me said, today you stay. And every day I looked inward, and every day I did the work. And that meant getting in touch with the anger and the resentment, not for him, but for the person I used to be that allowed things. And so to answer your question, that's been the spiritual journey that evolved past the physical. So I think phase 1 was the physical. Phase 2 was the evolution of my soul. And the acceptance and the forgiveness, not only of past injustices from parents that didn't know any better, from society that didn't know any better, from my husband that didn't know any better, but for myself for not knowing any better. And taking full responsibility for the person I was and the person I want to be, and becoming that without limiting myself to what other people needed, which I used to do. I used to play small to make others feel good. And I still fight with that. I am definitely an empathetic being who is sensitive to others. It makes me an amazing counselor, but it can really affect relationships. So yeah, my claim to fame is my husband's not a narcissist anymore.
But what I love is that it was not like you trying to change him. It was you, I mean, which is what your whole book is about, you shifting yourself. And within that, I heard a lot of taking responsibility, a lot of self-compassion and self-forgiveness. And as you said, you know, and that also led to also forgiving others, feeling compassion for others, for empathy for others. But it was about you taking responsibility for you.
Yeah. And even forgiveness, I don't even like that word, because when I think about that, that puts them in a level of they were wrong. And so it's more of accepting the past as the past, and it served a purpose for the evolution of who I am now. And they played a role in that. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't my fault. It just was, and accepting it for what it was.
Yes. No right or wrong. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So can I ask a more practical question? This is not, you know, but you talked about how to not make people wrong and not shame and blame, but also be able to say and speak truthfully about what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
On a practical sense, how do you do that?
Well,
so if your husband were to do something that you would consider narcissistic or whatever,
right.
and that's you're not going to people please into that anymore, because you've decided that you're going to be in a different space and live at a higher frequency. So how do you then communicate that with him in a way that doesn't shame or blame?
Okay. I have a great example of that. I didn't plan on sharing this, but I think it'll help people, so I'm okay with it. First of all, I did have to work on, and this is for everyone, you know, we have triggers because they're from past hurts. So I had to work on letting go of the past hurts. And as long as he was willing to work on himself, you know, and the work he's doing now is very different from the work he did, you know, 3-4 years ago when I was writing this book. You know, looking back on the work he was doing, then I probably would have left him, but I wasn't ready, you know, so I wasn't at this place. So now we're, you know, it's like a trajectory. So the example I'm going to use is something that happened as recently as, you know, a year ago. But this is how you do this. For me, and everybody's different, your truth can be completely different from mine. A lot of what I do in counseling is help people learn who they are. So for me, I am a peacemaker. I am a 9 on the Enneagram. I like to avoid chaos and conflict. My husband is a 3. When we're both operating at a really high level of our temperaments and our genetics are not being, you know, sparked by epigenetics, we are great together. But if one of us is off, it can set the other one off, just like anyone. So that really helps me love and accept him for who he is now. So I don't see his moments as narcissist. I see it as, oh, that's his personality and something's a little off. And then I can be his biggest advocate and say, hey, and this goes to that, it's not about you. When you can see with non-defensive eyes, you actually could save someone's life, you know, by asking them questions to lead them to their truth and discover maybe, oh, you know, you're a little toxic, something's off metabolically, you know, maybe we need to, you know, cleanse the liver or something like that. Now, that's my world, you know, of physical health coach, right? The last person that wants to hear that is your husband. I'll give you, now he listens to podcasts of other people who say the exact same thing as I do. Tom Billieu has been a blessing in his life because, you know, he's speaking my language and my husband can receive it from him. So I will say, plant seeds of other people because you don't need to be your husband or your children's health coach or counselor. Get other people to do that. But this one instance, like I said, we had been working on things and I was working on my communication and not being triggered by his behavior. And we had gone to pick up groceries in the neighborhood for, you know, the hungry. And we were to drive up to somebody's house and park the cars and open the trunks and take a picture. We didn't know that, we just knew we were supposed to drive up. But shortly after we got out, my husband had to get back in and level the car off with the other car to open the trunks and take a picture. And he got in and he started like really madly doing this, you know, pointing at the ground to me with the window up. So I couldn't hear him. And I said, oh, I moved the car seat. There was a car seat on the ground. And because I figured that's what he had saw before he got in the car, and he was worried about hitting it. And he does it again, really madly. And I'm like, I don't hear you. I don't know what you're saying. And he does it again. And I'm like, roll down the window. I don't know what you want. And the other lady had moved her car, and the cars lined up and everything was, you know, settled. And I said, never mind. She already moved hers. So he got out of the car. We took a picture, said goodbye. We got in the car, and my daughter was with us. And I said, you know, David, I don't know how I could have communicated better with you, my end of that. Did you think I could hear you and know what you were thinking? And he says, I was trying to get you to tell me if I was going to hit their lawn. And I said, but you didn't roll down the window. You just were very angry. And it seemed like you were frustrated with me. What could I have done differently to help understand you? And he goes, well, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect like you. I was like, okay. That was triggered, right? So I did not engage. I did not respond. My daughter got out at the next stop, wherever we were bringing her. And I said, and the old me would have avoided that conflict, right? The old me would have never said anything. And the new me, using the tools that I have, realized this is not about you. You did nothing wrong. And I said, David, I was trying to figure out where we went wrong in the communication, because clearly you're upset with me. And I'm realizing that it's not about me and that I didn't do anything to cause you being upset. So I need you to ask yourself, what were you thinking before you started pointing angrily at me? What was going through your head? And he looked up, and this is when you know they're doing the work, right? And anyone can do this work if you come from a place of wanting to be the change. He looked up and he said, I was embarrassed. I said, okay, why were you embarrassed? Because I thought I was going to roll over their lawn, and everybody was watching and waiting for me to move the car. I said, okay, well, where do you remember the first time you felt like that in life? That you felt like everybody is watching you and waiting for you, and you were going to screw up. I think first I said, okay, so when you feel like that, you belittle somebody else, which is the definition of narcissism. It's not because they think they're better. It's because they're afraid you're going to notice they're not. Mm-hmm. And he had this aha moment, and I had this aha moment. And it was a huge step, a huge step. But then I asked him, as the coach in me, which was probably not necessary, but where did you first feel that? And go back and erase that cellular memory of every time I'm insecure and I feel like people are watching me, I have to belittle and cause everyone to pay attention to you and what you're doing wrong, or make up that you're doing something wrong. I have to make you feel small, less than. Mm-hmm. And so I took control, and I didn't make it about me. And look what showed up, something to be healed. Mm-hmm. And so maybe 6 months later, I found the Enneagram work, and it really helped him see his temperament and see why he acts like he does in certain situations. It helped me realize my temperament and why I act the way I do in certain situations. And that further drove home the "it's not about you" chapter of, when you look outside as a third party perspective onto the situation and you don't react to the energy that somebody's putting on you, and you don't make their negativity about you, you actually can evoke real positive change in a situation. And then, you know, your kids win, you win, you know, society wins. We can all live in a more harmonious place, because we're really, I'm going to quote myself, we're really all just humans with wounds to heal. And when we heal those wounds and we don't show up in our wounds and we don't react to other people's wounds, we really are just wanting to be loved and loved. So
that was a really powerful story. And I don't know if I would have the same exact, like, I don't know if I would be able to do it the same way with my own husband, but that's another story because they're different people anyways.
That's your truth. And that's based on your temperament and his temperament. And you probably wouldn't be with someone like my husband, you know, so based on your temperament, right? But that's trying to not put people in boxes, but yet we have to understand that if we're all, you know, this way, we do have certain personality traits. We do have certain things that might have come up because of wounds. And we're acting in a story of a wounded victim, then we're going to show up very differently in that personality than the good traits of that personality. So it doesn't mean you would have been wrong to react the way you would have to your husband. It just is your truth, not mine. But for so many people that want to keep their marriage together because they see something in that person that they know that something in me knew this can change. This dynamic can change if I change. It was the work I needed to do to stop being a people pleaser, to stop avoiding conflict. So that's what it looked like for me. It could be for him. For him, he says, instead of thinking I'm right about everything, I always ask, what if she's right about this? And then he went to, I assume you're right about everything. And that's fine with me. So, you know, everybody's truth is going to be different. Everybody's story is going to be different. If that story resonates with somebody and tells them there's more work to be done, then that's exactly what they need to do. Dig deeper. And that's why I have a dig deeper course, because I know this is going to stir some things up. To be let go and to change. We don't start this journey as an awakened soul. We start as a very self-absorbed, crying little baby that wants everything done for them. And we get told we can't stay like that. So the evolution of that is where we go. And what that looks like from you is based on your choices and your circumstances. And my circumstances are from, you know, this person, this, you know, this being. And so whoever resonates with that, it will be for.
Right. Exactly. Beautiful. So a couple times you've brought up the idea of my truth is not your truth and all that. How do you define truth? Like, there, our justice system would define it in one way, but how do you define it? I mean, what is truth to you?
I think whatever resonates as peace for you. I think if you're still in your head ruminating about something, you haven't found your truth, and your truth isn't out there. It's not, you know, yes, you can change your epigenetics to hone in on that truth. If your truth is coming from a place of, you know, like I said before, those low frequency feelings, then there's work to be done. So finding your truth is finding that place inside that resonates at that frequency of love. And so if you're not there, there's work to be done to get you there. So asking people questions to lead them to their truth is what I do in my coaching style.
So if someone doesn't know that they don't know their truth, we're having a little bit of an internet something happening. I apologize to everybody who's watching. So if you meet someone who you can probably tell from the outside hasn't found their truth yet, how do you help them see it? Or do you not? Or what do you do in those situations?
Well, it's not your job to fix or force change on anyone, which is the point of the book.
Yes.
Like you said before, you plant seeds. Just by being you, you plant seeds. I don't intentionally plant seeds. I live in intention. And if that means I'm planting seeds unwittingly, or because I'm intentionally going through my day of being the change for me, and that resonates with somebody, they're going to want what I'm having. They're going to seek me. And I've seen clients come to me and I planted seeds and they weren't ready to go deeper, and they got to a level of healing that they were comfortable with. And they went off and they did great things, but then they came back and revisited when they were ready for that next phase. So for me as a coach, letting go of my need to see them to fruition of whatever I think is the truth, right? It's, just like my husband, I could get caught up in, oh, he's not where I am. Well, that's narcissistic of me, right? So I practice gratitude of, man, we've come so far. And when you practice gratitude, that raises your frequency. So when you're in that slump, because I'm human, I get pissed, I get aggravated, I get frustrated. But when I practice these tools that I give in the book, I can shift that frequency and I can go to my rational thinking and journal my feelings out and come to a place of gratitude for the good things, and how different we are because I did the work. Gratitude for me that I was so strong and resilient that I did the work. So I can't give that to somebody that's so far into the victim state that they don't want you to pull them out. And it's not your job to pull them out. I think I use the example in the book, it's like seeing someone drown and knowing that if you jump in to save them, they pull you under too. So setting healthy boundaries with people like that is crucial. And the healthier I've gotten, the more I can sense those people and send them, I say like a life preserver, send them good thoughts, healing thoughts, prayer, whatever your intentions are for good, but let go. It's not about you. You're not their savior. You weren't here to play God. And by fixing them, that's an ego and that's control. So let go of control over others. Some inner work to do on you if you wanted to do that, if you're wanting to fix someone, then there's more work to be done on you.
I love that image that I just got in your head about sending them a life preserver as opposed to you being the life preserver.
Exactly. That's the planting seeds part, right? That's the, okay, when my son was going through a hard time in college, I planted seeds. I suggested things. I knew it was up to him to do what he needed to do. And that if I got in the way and kept up an enabling position, he would never hit the rock bottom he needed. And thank God I allowed him to do that because, who knew a couple of years later he'd be having kids. And what he learned in that rock bottom state was a health journey. And now his kids are holistically living a healthier life than they would have had he not come to those failings that proved right. So
my dog's outside. He just barked. He wants to come in. Oh well,
he gets part of our talk.
I was just thinking of your example with your son is bigger than mine, but I wake up every morning to meditate. And I would wake up at 6 and journal and do some other things. And I would wake up at 6 and my husband would stay in bed. And in my head, and my husband tends to get stressed. In my head, I was like, it'd be great if you would meditate. It would be great if you would meditate. And I mentioned it a couple times. Now he's getting up at 6 with me and meditating. And I love it. And it was just through example, just sharing. And he always says to me, you're never stressed. And I was like, well, no, I do, but it's just, I look at stress in a different way than you, but it's the planting the seeds.
You don't let the stress control you. You know that it's going to serve a purpose. You might not know what that is, but you don't attach a story to make it worse. You just allow. And because you've set intention first thing in the morning, you're in a better state to deal with whatever life throws at you. And sometimes what it's throwing at you is about that other person. It has nothing to do with you.
Yes, sometimes it does. That's true. And you bring that up in the book, the whole idea, and you brought it up already, this whole idea of it's not about me, or it's not about me. And earlier this year, we read the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And one of the agreements is don't take anything personally. And a lot of the members of our book circle were like, but people give me a compliment, I'm not supposed to take it personally. And I'm like, yeah, you're not. And they're like, but I like those compliments. So can you explain from your perspective, this whole idea of it's not about me, even if people say things positively or negatively, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So first of all, shout out to, the 4 agreements. I actually had not read that when I wrote the book, but that was a book that I read when this was at the publisher, and I felt so validated because it resonated with my work. And so not to compare myself, but I just really felt like, oh gosh, I'm writing it on a different scale. People that are going to see that probably would never buy the 4 agreements. Maybe they would. Your group, they've already read the 4 agreements. Then they read this and it's more practical application maybe. And it drives his points home. So definite homage to him and his work, and met him and his son and heard him speak, friends with his son on Facebook, amazing humans doing great work. So yes, when you, so to use your example, I mean, that's so different than the examples I've been giving. When someone says you look good, it's to make them feel good. Because maybe they're a people pleaser like me, and they're so tuned in to how you feel that they want to uplift you because they want to be around positive people. It's all about control. Everything people do is truly about themselves. And so if you make their stuff your stuff, then you take that on. And so, yes, we're all connected, and it's nice to get compliments. It's nice for people to notice you. It's nice to be appreciated. But if you're not getting all those things, does that make you who you are any less? And so when you take that control away from other people, my husband doesn't compliment, never has. And for years it bothered me. It really bothered me. But now I totally get why he doesn't, because he has some OCD tendencies. And when he looks at things, he sees what's wrong, not what's right. And that is starting to shift now that he's getting healthier. But if I had, based how I feel about myself on him telling me, which I used to, I would have a problem with self-esteem. So when I don't make his issue mine, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't give him control over my feelings and my thoughts. So teaching people how, other people's stuff is not yours, whether it's good or bad, it just is. And it's their perspective based on their past and their journey. And so when we don't make it about us, we can really see in a third-party perspective and actually do well for that situation. I tell moms this all the time with their children. They're so worried about what's going on, but they're seeing it with the worrisome, controlling eyes of a mother that wants to fix. And when they step back, they're probably totally wrong about what they think's going on. And they're missing the simple thing that can be tweaked to change everything. And so I think we make things more difficult when we make them about us. And cause more stress in others when we make things about us.
It's so aligned with, so much of the work that I do with the women that.
I can't hear you, so I think you're frozen.
Oh no.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
There you go.
Say that again.
Anyways, I was just saying, I resonated. Oh, can you hear me now? Or am I frozen? Yeah, okay. That what you were saying resonated a lot because so much of my work is about helping women to develop a foundation of self that's not other directed. Or other person or thing directed.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah. Not manipulative, not to try and get an outcome, but to resonate with what your truth is. Because what's true for you will work out for everybody else. But when you're not living in your truth and you're trying to control circumstances and outcomes to be what you think they should be, that's manipulation. And teaching people pleasers and wanna-do-gooders that concept is like, they get it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this my whole life. And I was like, it's okay. That's how you were taught. The ancestors that came before us, I mentioned in the book, they weren't told. We weren't told as women we could say no.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's really what the Me Too movement is about. When you get down to it, it's we were taking our voices away. That's why we have so many thyroid issues with women. And that's a whole nother delving into the dick. I give you everything, but I go deep with women's issues and why they're there. And it's our responsibility to take back our voice in a healthy manner, not to be angry and totally cancel out our femininity, but embrace our masculinity too. You know, we have testosterone too. We have to have equal parts of, you know, female and male in us. We should all be operating in that balance. And if you're not, it's going to be hard for you to show up and own your voice and speak your truth from a place of health and well-being for you that will resonate health and well-being for others. So
I just had this big, huge aha moment about like the throat chakra and our voices and the thyroid. That was just like, wow. Okay. And chakras, that's something we could talk about a whole other time.
That's the digging deeper into the physical, spiritual evolution of, of mankind.
So one of the things, like, I'm not gonna go into all the details of all the chapters of the book because people can buy the book, right?
Yes, we want them to buy
One thing that you have throughout each chapter is you have an affirmation attached to each chapter. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us more about why the affirmations and what it is, what affirmations do for you and why they're important to you?
I think affirmations, for me, writing them in the beginning of each chapter was to set the tone and set the intention for the chapter. So to get in your head, this is what I want you to get out of this. I want you to be able to say this over and over again every day while you're reading this, because it is going to stir up some emotions. It is going to stir up, you know, things that need to be let go of. And so for me, for this purpose, it was is the only way I could see to give you something positive to resonate on until it became familiar. It's like building a muscle. You know, Marissa Peer does the I am enough written on the glass mirror every day. I think that at the basis of everyone, whether you're a narcissistic people pleaser or all these different personality traits, you know, that come up in people, it's I am not enough. I'm not worthy. And so speaking a new language to yourself of, you know, for me with the physical ailments, I'm healthy. I am perfectly in alignment with where I'm supposed to be right now, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Does that mean I've arrived? No, I'd be dead because I'm not going to be perfect until I'm gone, but I'm right where I need to be. And so owning that, you know, every day, I think affirmations can shift that brain, that thinking. Because when I talk about epigenetics, it's your thoughts, right? It's not, you know, your thoughts will lead to your decisions. You know, you'll make better choices. When you think you're enough, you're going to buy that maybe more expensive, you know, makeup that's non-toxic because you're enough. You know, if you think you're enough, you're going to go ahead and invest. You know, for me, that looks like, you know, my Young Living I have going on in the back. I have a gratitude oil in there, pumping, and a clarity oil in there for our conversation. I'm going to spend my dollars on holistic tools, whether it's the food I eat or the, you know, the savvy minerals I put on my face that are non-toxic, or the, you know, the fragrance, you know, that comes from a plant as opposed to a bottle of perfume that's going to make me toxic. So your choices will change as your mindset changes. So I think an affirmation can do that mind shifting for you. And that was the easiest way for me to do it in a book. Now, one-on-one, we can do other things, you know, for mind shifting to help you get rid of the old dogma and principles that are keeping you stuck in victimhood.
So I'm looking at the time. Can I ask 2 more questions?
Sure. I'm free.
Okay. So first question, I just want to pick up on the victimhood thing because it's come up multiple times. And I think when people hear the word victim, sometimes people are like, ooh, I'm not a victim or whatever.
Yeah.
So how does one recognize that they're in victimhood, or that they're maybe not fully in victimhood, or they're using victim language, or like, are there any key things that people can be aware of to kind of test themselves. Ooh, am I being a victim? Am I not? Do you have any pointers?
Yeah. A real easy one. Are you blaming other people? Are you not taking self-responsibility? Do you kind of know you should be working out, or do you kind of know you should not be, eating that fast food? Do you kind of know that you're drinking too much coffee? Do you kind of know, but yet you're saying, I don't know, like, well, I can't, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't change my diet because no one would eat what I cook in my house.
Yeah.
That's a real benign one that I hear, on the health journey, right? Yeah. Here you are with all these issues and you can't change your diet because you need to feed everybody else something different. No, no, by you changing your diet and saying, hey, this is what's going to work best for me. So if you don't want this, you're going to be responsible for getting something else. Then you actually might evoke positive change in them. Mm-hmm. That's really at the basis of the you change, they change phase one, right? You take control of what's best for you, and it actually is best for everyone else too. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want it, then they're going to have to inconvenience themselves to do something different. And they're going to be making that choice for themselves. Mm-hmm. But if you're, constantly limiting yourself by other people's choices or what you perceive, or you're using their choice as an excuse for you not to do what they weren't given this knowledge, you were. They weren't given this physical ailment, you were. Mm. So what do you need to do for you to do better, to know better, to be better? And so a clue for me is anyone that's blaming somebody else needs to look in that mirror. That's a real
one of the chapters in the book about looking in the mirror.
I think I said a few of them, didn't I?
You did.
Your intentions. I'm still living it. It was written over 4 years ago. I'm still, I still believe in it. It was nice for getting ready for this call. I did listen to it on Audible in fast forward. In high speed, listen to myself in high speed, because I do talk slowly on the Audible because I think you need to digest the information. So for me, I sped it up.
Got it. I do that on most Audibles that I listen to. Okay, so I have one last question, and that's essentially just an open question about what piece of advice would you want to leave people with that they can really walk away and be like, okay, and feel empowered around the choices that they're making, around their life, around control or not control, and all that.
I would say change the one thing that you need to change. Don't feel like you've got to go all in overnight, because the body's not made to change that quickly. Actually, there's physical limitations that can occur. So you can get healing crisis where you're literally sick, you're dying to self to be reborn, but it's physically feels like you're dying. So I say change one thing. If it's that Diet Coke that you're drinking, get rid of it. If it's your language, adding in that meditation in the morning, setting your intentions. I give tools in the book, and there is a free course because I know you need tools. I know that this book is the seeds, but you need to go and water them and grow them. So I give you tools to grow them. The affirmations are one, but then there's meditation for peace. Prayer for peace, and a meditation that you can do online. If you go on my online site, there's Qigong, mindful movements, I call it, but it's Qigong, Donna Eaton's energy work, and years of physical therapy all rolled into one. It's called my mindful movements. I have a neck stretch. Add one thing in, and it's one-stop shop. You can go to my site and pick something and add it in every day. Just like you started adding in meditation in your morning and it set the tone for your whole day. Mm-hmm. So life-changing. So change one thing for 30 days. And because you changed that one thing that you knew instinctively, we all know we need to give stuff up or change something. Because you changed that one thing, it will bleed out into, you'll look back and say, wow, look how much my life has changed. But it started with that one thing. Because that one thing will be the ripple effect, which is why there's a ripple effect. So be that change for yourself. Change that one thing. and it will bleed out into many things. And before you know it, you'll be writing your own book. You'll be talking to people about it, and we'll be changing the world. So it starts with you.
Beautiful. Starts with you. So thank you so much. And for all of you that are listening to this or watching it later, there's a link down below this to purchase her book, so you can get it. And yeah, just thank you for your wisdom, for your sharing, for just, your courage as well, because you shared some things that were personal. And just thank you so much for being willing to contribute to our book circle community, and also just to the greater community.
I think the concept you've chosen is great. I think we're in a fast-paced world where we go through information so quickly and then we don't apply it. So I think a book circle is a great, with these intentional books that can teach us so much. And I would be honored if your book circle bought my book. And I would even come back and answer any questions maybe after y'all finished it that come up for people to add clarity. But I think that's so important, to not just digest the information and move on, but to use it.
Yes.
Use what's useful to you. And, yes, those books plant seeds, then they might grow later, but water them a little bit. And I think that's what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for being here.